I believe the ghost of a suicide victim tried to get me to kill myself too. My husband and I moved into an apartment a couple years ago where I started to basically go insane. It always felt like someone was watching me and I became horrifically depressed. I would get so sad that sometimes I would even just spontaneously start crying, and I often fantasized about hanging myself from the rafters in this one room. I would sometimes hear the rafters creaking and go in there, then imagine myself hanging in front of the window being the cause of the creaking. I had been depressed in the past, but this was something on another level. I was seriously suicidal, despite being happily married and genuinely enjoying life before moving into this place. I thought that I had some serious mental illness that was emerging. Several months into living there, our neighbor, a sweet old woman that had lived in the building for decades, told us that a young woman hung herself from the rafters in that room in the late 80s. She was discovered by a man walking his dog who saw her hanging in front of the window. Our neighbor said she was a very unfriendly person, who kept to herself and never had anyone over. According to her, every single one of the female tenants in their mid-20s to early 30s that have moved in since her suicide never renewed their leases past the first year, and all seemed troubled, as she put it, while they lived there. I was 27 at the time, the exact same age she was when she died. My husband and I noped the duck out of there pretty much immediately after we learned this. We still had a few months left on our lease, so we had to pay double rent during the time, but it was worth it. Literally the day we got out, my mental health recovered completely and has been back to normal ever since. I believe with all my heart that she was there in that apartment with us, and for whatever reason, she wanted me to repeat history and endure the same fate as her. Apparently, I babysat more than one kid. When I was 13, I babysat a little girl named Emma, one of the sweetest kids you could think of. I was a regular babysitter for her, so much so that when I couldn't babysit for a few months, she called all her other babysitters by my name. This happened after I came back to be a regular babysitter for her. It was about 10:30 at night. I had already put Emma to bed and had been channel surfing. The house was set up that the front half was open concept. The living room, dining room and kitchen were side by side. In between the living room and dining room was an open doorway to the back half of the house. At one end was Emma's room, the other end has her parents', with the bathroom connected to the parents' room. Now, while sitting on the couch, I heard something run down the hall to the bathroom. Assuming it was just Emma going to the bathroom, I let be. A few minutes went by and I heard the feet heading back down the hall. I turned to tell her to go back and make sure she flushed, as I hadn't heard it, but I only saw the tips of black hair that had ran past the open doorway. Here's the problem: Emma is blonde. I quickly jumped up and rushed to Emma's bedroom, throwing open the door, her nightlight bright enough to make her out as she sat up and looked at me, rubbing her eyes in confusion. I asked her if she had gone to the bathroom. When she shook her head, I did a once-over of her room, checking under her bed and a quick peek in her closet. I didn't see anything, and I just told Emma I was double-checking for monsters. I tucked Emma back in, saying goodnight as I headed out of her room again, leaving it slightly open. I began to walk away but stopped when I hear Emma speak, thinking she was going to ask me something. I turned to listen, only to hear, "You should have said something. Don't scare her. I really like her." I didn't say anything to the mom about and continued to babysit Emma until they moved away. I always made an effort after that to include the being. If Emma was drawing, an extra spot was set up. It seems to make Emma happy, and nothing ever startled me again. I think I made a deal with some kind of shadow entity when I was a child. I know the title sounds like a no sleep, but hear me out. As a kid I suffered terrible abuse, to the point I was nonverbal for a year when at home. My mom raised us militant Christian, you are God's soldier fighting evil on earth type stuff. I prayed every night for it to stop, but I felt, and still feel, God didn't care, so I remember begging for anything to help me. Then it did stop. My meth head stepdad took off and my other abuser refused to come even within eyesight of me. I started to see a shadow person around that time, and unlike all the stories I have heard, he had eyes, they just look like voids of molten silver, like there is no end to them. I was never afraid. I always felt better, safer when I saw it. I saw him every day multiple times. My little brother did too, but he was never afraid either. When I was in a safe scenario again, I didn't see him as often, just occasionally when I was upset. The weird thing was, is if I was ever genuinely curious with someone or they hurt me physically or emotionally, they would soon start to avoid me as well. As if they were scared to be around me. Years later, when I was in my 20s, my best friend and I had a huge falling out. We made up months later when we both had time to collect ourselves, and she told me she saw him. He would be in corners of her room, but most commonly in mirrors always standing behind her. She said that she felt it was somehow connected to me, and that was affirmed because after we made up, she didn't see him again. My life is much calmer now, so I don't see him often, but if I get scared or start to go off the deep end in my mania or depression, I feel him, and it soothes me. This doesn't sound like any shadow person I have ever heard of, but that is what he is, or I think so. Looks like a tall man with silver eyes and is as dark as the woods at night. I am just wondering if anyone else has heard about anything similar or seen anything like this before. I am just curious, as my Google foo is weak sauce and I can't find anything about experiences like this. Please like our video and subscribe to our channel, so you won't miss out any of our future videos. Thank you for your support. This is Reddit Joe channel, your everyday Reddit.